right, my friends. Thanks for joining me today. J.R. Dukes at your service. Appreciate you tuning in. I want to say a quick hello to all of our friends on the X platform. And I just hit the go-go button, so let me know if you can hear me. Hello to YouTube and, of course, to our friends on the Twitch platform. A lot of news going on today. Lots of stuff happening. I think everybody can hear me pretty well. If you are new to the channel, come on in and introduce yourself. All right, looks like we're got everything firing up the way it should be. So, as I just said, I'm J.R. Dukes, your host. Thanks for joining me today. I am all about ending indoctrination. It's important we have these conversations together so we can live our best life possible by understanding the world in which we live in. And there is a lot of news to discuss, a lot of breaking news. Specifically today, one of the main things we're going to talk about has to do with, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of rumors going on right now pertaining to President Trump-elect. Woohoo! I'm obviously glad that he has won. I'm sure you feel the same way, especially if you're listening to this channel. We have definitely been all about Donald Trump for quite some time now. Or a few housekeeping things here. If you would like to ask a question, if you have a comment, do not hesitate to put it in the comment bar. I will receive comments no matter what platform you are listening to me on. Additionally, I'm going to post a link if you would like to join me by video, because this is a open platform chat. So if you'd like to appear by video, just hit that link and you can use your camera phone. If you do not want to be on camera, no problem. You can simply phone a friend, so to speak. Just hit that button and talk to me accordingly. If you like to comment, have a civil discussion about whatever, that's what this channel is here for. So at any rate, this is the J.R. Dukes Power Hour, and we're going to dive right into the stream that I got going on right now. Zach, thanks for joining me. I had lunch, and now I need a cat nap. Yeah, I hope your cats are doing well, my friend. I know that I know you got 2 or 3 cats, right? If not more. But at any rate, I hope you had a good lunch, and we're going to start diving into it right now. So let me go ahead and switch screens over here. Let's see exactly what Donald Trump, president-elect, has to say, because there's a lot going on right now pertaining to his cabinet picks, and of course, he's choosing his cabinet and whatnot. So let's go ahead and take a peek at this. All right. Our favorite president-elect, Donald Trump. Oh, and as I hinted about in the thumbnail, there's a lot of reports going on right now pertaining to will President Biden pardon Donald Trump. And I'm going to tell you why that speculation is going on, and I want to share my thoughts with you on that because there's some interesting things to take a look at, and I think there may be 1 or 2 reasons why that might be very likely to happen. In addition to that, we're going to talk about some current court cases going on involving President Donald Trump-elect, specifically the one handled by Judge Merchant up in New York with DA Alvin Bragg out of New York City. Very important that we discuss that case and exactly what the implications are. Some very unprecedented type of things going on, and we need to chat about it. So just a couple hours ago, President Trump, he's still filling his cabinet, ladies and gentlemen. He has appointed, he says, I am pleased to announce that former acting attorney, Matthew G. Whitaker, this is a person that he has been associated with for quite some time. He says that from the great state of Iowa will be the United States ambassador to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which of course is referenced with the acronym NATO. So that's great news. Here's Donald Trump yesterday. I think this is a really cool picture. I think we have a video of this coming up here in just a second, but this is President Donald Trump with Elon Musk. And of course, they were watching one of Elon's rockets at SpaceX take off. You have to admit, that is really cool. The technology, the developments, these rockets that Elon Musk was able to produce with the efforts of, well, his efforts, frankly, and the efforts of the people that he has been working with. Who would ever think we live in a time where you could literally see a rocket coming back to Earth in the same position upright that it left in, and it's planned to be reusable? Pretty stunning, if you ask me. The technology, there's just no telling where this technology is going to lead to. So we're also going to talk about Alan Dershowitz. He had a couple of interesting takes that we need to discuss pertaining to the case in New York City, again, with President-elect Donald Trump. So let's go ahead and let's jump into the next thing, which we're going to look at this article that has to do with, and you can ask the question directly, is President Biden, or should President Biden pardon Donald Trump? Let me know what you guys think. You think it's a good idea, bad idea? Doesn't matter. I don't think it really matters either way that you look at it, but clearly this is intriguing. We're going to take a look at this article together, and then we will discuss it. And I have an interesting thing, too, that I got it written down right here. When we get to the New York case with Alvin Bragg, I got something that if you're a Trump fan, I think you're going to love pertaining to that case, despite what they're telling you in these so-called mainstream news media. And one other little morsel that I want to try to fit in today, because this is fascinating to watch, and that is, have you all noticed that the liberal media, basically all the channels, are losing their mind as far as this election, and people around the country, just people all over the internet, they're in panic mode, my friends. They are just really still having some serious Trump derangement syndrome. It's very clear, very obvious. Zach had lunch, needs his cat nap, and he is showing us his cats here. Thank you so much, Zach. You've been a long-time supporter of my channel here, and we always appreciate having you on board. All right, so this particular article, as you can see on your screen, hope you all can see it clearly. This is from an online publication called Conservative Patriots. All right. Biden should pardon Trump on his way out. This is what they call an opt-in. Last week, the executive editor of the National Review published a column urging President Joe Biden, to invite President-elect Donald Trump to the White House and consider granting him a pardon. This call to action came just one day after Trump's decisive electoral victory. Biden did, in fact, host Trump at the White House. We all remember that from last week, the photo op where President Biden, to say the least, he was super gleeful, super excited. And we have a lot of reasons why we believe that is the case. I'm sure he's very happy deep down inside that Kamala Harris did not become the president of the United States. I think Joe Biden feels vindicated by her loss. And if I have to, kind of really share my deep thoughts on this matter, I would not be surprised at all if President Biden and Dr. Jill Biden actually voted for Donald Trump, of all things. He was really, really embarrassed and humiliated with that coup that happened in our government. I mean, you can call it whatever you want, but it was a de facto coup. How more unconstitutional, how anti-democratic, how anti-democracy can you get, other than basically nullifying the votes of the 14 or 15 million people that voted to put Joe Biden the head of the Democratic ticket for president of the United States on the Democratic side? Obviously undemocratic to the core. And one other good little tidbit about this, the fact that this happened the way it happened, I would very seriously doubt that this would ever be allowed to happen in American history again. I don't think you're going to ever see a party just decide to have a coup, rip out the guy that was voted in or the woman that was voted to head the ticket, and then replace that individual without having some type of vote, some type of primary. I think that's very clear, but time will tell. All right, so Biden invited Trump to the White House. Biden should use his constitutional authority to pardon Donald Trump of all pending federal charges and relieve special counsel Jack Smith of his duties, aka fire him. This was written by Mark Anthony Wright. He should then request New York Governor Kathy Hochul to exercise her authority to pardon Trump for his New York State convictions. Wright acknowledged Trump's responsible for some of the crimes. I don't think so. The crimes, we'll put that in quotes, he has faced charges or convictions, but argued that the president-elect's victories in both the Electoral College and the popular vote represented a definitive verdict on the subject delivered by the highest authority, aka the people of the United States. Whether wise or not, the majority of the voters have chosen Donald Trump to serve again as president of the United States, Wright said. He should begin his term in January 2025, unencumbered by the controversies of the past. Amen to that, and we'll talk about that in a second. Wright emphasized that ongoing legal battles would be would be detrimental to the nation. No good will come from the American president carrying out constitutional duties while under the shadow of pending criminal charges, nor would it benefit anyone for Trump to order the Department of Justice to drop the cases or take the unprecedented step of self-pardoning. We've talked about that too, as far as can Trump pardon himself or can he not pardon himself? Interesting things, interesting legal actions that the president could take that frankly has not been adjudicated by the United States Supreme Court. Article is concluding by saying Joe Biden has rarely acted as a statesman. Oh, that's pretty brutal, right? As a statesman during his time in office. However, pardoning Donald Trump now would be a truly statesman-like act. It could help break the cycle of the legal battles that risk deepening divisions in the nation. Gerald Ford's pardon of Richard Nixon. I don't know if many of y'all remember that. That was quite some time ago. But Gerald Ford's pardon of Richard Nixon is a clear precedence here, and a good one, Wright wrote. He also suggested that Trump should accept the pardon if offered and find a way to, at least rhetorically, extend an olive branch to the outgoing president. Of course, there is no love loss between Joe Biden and Donald Trump for very good reason. Meanwhile, reports suggest Special Counsel Jack Smith may soon step down from his role following the conclusion of his cases against Trump. He does not want to be fired by Donald Trump. A Justice Department source revealed to CNN that Smith is in discussions with DOJ, Department of Justice, leadership about winding down the investigations, including the January 6th case and the appeal of the U.S. District Judge's Elaine Cannon's ruling to dismiss the classified documents case. Remember, that was the case in Florida where they frankly had, in my estimation, the most serious case, the most likely to be able to legitimately be proven as potentially a felon. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why that would not be, but that was probably their strongest case, if I could phrase it like that. And of course, fortunately, he received a very good advocate and a person that was not afraid to do what was right in Judge Elaine Cannon, and she outright dismissed the entire case. Trump has threatened to fire Smith, but Smith expects to be gone before Trump takes office. CNN reported the discussions reportedly extend beyond Trump's cases, addressing broader questions about other defendants in the classified documents case, as well as the budget and staff of the special counsel's office. Smith is required to submit a final report on his investigation to Attorney General Merrick Garland. Boy, that guy's a joke, ain't he, Merrick Garland? According to sources, Smith aims to complete his report before Trump's inauguration, though its timing may depend on the review of and approval process by the intelligence community. As reported by the New York Times, Smith plans to finalize his work and resign prior to Trump swearing in. Before his departure, Smith must resolve the 2 criminal cases he launched against Trump. And then finally, in Florida, Smith is appealing Judge Cannon's ruling that his appointment as special counsel was unconstitutional and that his office's funding violated the law. In Washington, D.C., his team is proceeding with the case against Trump of conspiring to overturn the 2020 election following the Supreme Court's decision on presidential immunity. And we all remember that case pertaining to the presidential immunity. Wisely and gratefully, the Supreme Court obviously came to the right conclusion in that particular case. One other thing, too, to note, in relation to this case with Judge Elaine Cannon, you may be thinking, well, why are they appealing that case if the judge had good grounds to throw the case out? And the reason she threw the case out technically is because Jack Smith was not appointed in a constitutional way, in a way that complied with the law. And I think that's pretty clear. It's pretty black and white. However, Even though President Trump is the incoming president of the United States, the DOJ wants to pursue that appeal, if nothing else, to answer that question for the future. Can the Department of Justice effectively appoint a special counsel without approval through their normal channels? They would like to have that question answered, but the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, that if they do not resolve this somehow, which can't be done on an appellate level before President Trump-elect takes office, it's over, because all the new DOJ under Matt Gaetz or whoever assumes that position, all they would have to do is file the appropriate paperwork with the Court of Appeals to dismiss the case. So this is a total and complete victory, or at least will soon be, for incoming President Donald Trump-elect, but we'll just have to see how it all works out. Again, I think it's interesting, and I think it is something that should be done. In other words, I believe that President Joe Biden, he is obviously concerned about history, reviewing him and looking back on his so-called legacy. So I think that there is a really good chance that he will pardon Donald Trump. As the article referenced, you had Gerald Ford pardon Richard Nixon over Watergate. At the time, he said that it would not be in the interest of the United States, the American people, if they were to see a former president of the United States, aka Richard Nixon, go to jail. And I think that that was the appropriate decision. And in this case, listen, Joe Biden did something somewhat unforgivable by taking our great country and effectively turning it into this banana republic, where he has set a precedent that if you don't like your opposition, then what you need to do is throw everything against them and see what sticks. Take them to court, aka lawfare, imprison them, embarrass them with mugshots and being under arrest, go after their children, go after their businesses like Letitia James is doing in New York City. I mean, I could go on and on, but this has been a very embarrassing and terrible chapter in the United States. I don't really think there's any other clearer way to say that. So, yes, I think it'd be a good idea for him to pardon the president as he's leaving. I think it'd be a good idea for Donald Trump to accept the pardon. And then finally, I think another reason that you will likely see President Joe Biden offer this pardon to Donald Trump is because, despite what he has said, Joe Biden is going to definitely pardon his son. I don't think there's any other way around that. You know he's going to pardon his son, and so do I. If he doesn't, I would be nothing short of shocked. Can you imagine any of us as parents, if you have children, daughters, sons, whatever, can you imagine being in a position of power and have the ability to save your children from literally being incarcerated? And incarceration definitely has effects on someone's health, their mental health. Additionally, when you go to prison, you have risk to your security, to your person. You could be killed in prison. I mean, it's pretty open and shut. His son is also, I believe he's like 50 some years of age. If he was to go to prison for 20 years, that could be potentially a life sentence. So, I mean, there's many reasons for this. The president can justify it in his mind any way he wants to. I don't see any situation where President Joe Biden does not pardon his son before he leaves office. Let me know your thoughts on that. You all agree, disagree? I'd be curious to see exactly what you think about that. All right, Zach. Yeah, Joey needs to do something positive before he leaves. Boys, on that, that's what you call an understatement, right, my friend? You're exactly right. Zach, their democracy, more than 50% of the vote is now Trump's democracy. Yes. Exactly. And then Garland, yeah, he's not my favorite person, to put it mildly. Definitely not somebody that I would want to, not somebody that I would want, or not somebody that I would pick. Let's move on. Now, as I was telling you, the Democrats are still in kind of a state of shock and a state of mourning. They're not sure exactly what went wrong. A lot of them in their mind, they still cannot figure out that the American people did not want a candidate like you see on your screen right here, effectively a socialist, a Marxist, whatever you want to call her. It probably fits the bill. Who wants a candidate that believes that we need to always be introducing our pronouns before we speak? And also, I got a video, if we get to it on X, where I think it's one of the senators was making fun of that in one of his recent speeches that he just gave. But you have a candidate like Kamala Harris that is clearly not qualified to be president of the United States. Every single policy of hers is even to the left of someone like Bernie Sanders. And these people are walking around now like, hey, what could have happened? How can this happen? How did this happen? We don't understand. It's like they're walking around with their heads cut off and they just don't have any idea how this possibly happened. But anyway, I wanted to share this. I thought this was kind of funny. This was in a online paper called Conservative Brief. It says, photo of Harris vacationing in Hawaii goes viral after the massive loss to Trump. That's a beautiful picture of her, isn't it? So we're not going to read all this article. I just want to touch on it here. It says, Vice President Kamala Harris has finally been seen in public following her massive loss to now President-elect Donald Trump on a beach in Hawaii. The photo hit social media and immediately went viral, with several users on X making various comments. So here's supposed to be the photo, but they did a quote-unquote fact check on this photo. They don't even know this photo is real. They think it may have been taken somewhere else, according to the context, the fact checking there on the X platform. But it's indicative of a bigger thing, because let's be honest about it, everything about Kamala Harris was fake, fabricated. And I'm talking about the so-called endorsements from Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey was paid $1 to $2 million, depending on what the final audit reveals. And the rappers and the other personnel that was there, these so-called Hollywood celebrities, they were all paid. They were all paid to be there. I believe Eminem received like $1.2 million. Remember, this is the woman that was supposed to be the next president of the United States. She received $1 to $2 billion from individuals around the United States contributing her campaign, and now she is reportedly in debt. Unbelievable. And Zach, you're right. Our pantsuits proper Hawaiian. Yeah, that's exactly what some of the readers are saying. So we'll take a look at it. It says the photo is neither from today nor, I like this play right here. They call it Kalana, Hawaii. They're making fun of the Kamala versus the what do you call it? It's just a play on her. Let me bounce back to the actual picture there. It's a play on her name, and they're calling her, they're naming her Kelowna or Kalawa. It's kind of like Kamala. I get it. At least that's what they were trying to do right there. So, okay, let's continue. It says it was taken on August 16, 2022 at a Falupa Foundation Farmers Market at Hanai. I can't say a lot of these cities there in Hawaii, but it's in Hawaii, and on the opposite side of the island that she is reportedly on. So again, more fake stuff from Kamala Harris, and everybody's having a good time with this, making comments below it. As a matter of fact, here's one here: 20 million in debt, and she goes on vacation. Must be nice. Yeah, I would think that too. And of course, someone else said she deserves a vacation. Yeah, she's obviously very deserving of a vacation. She worked really, really hard. You remember all that about her criticizing President-elect, now Donald Trump, that he was exhausted and getting tired. Yet there was videos of her all over the place, yawning, acting fatigued, like she was exhausted. And she might do one event one day and then have to take off the next day. You really just can't make this stuff up. But at any rate, that is what your favorite former vice president is doing right now. She's taking a well-deserved vacation in the great state of Hawaii, right? So I don't know. I find that hilarious and I just had to share that with you. So let's moving on. Not only, and this is all really good news when you get right down to it, there is so much going on as far as the meltdown that has been ensuing. We know there's issues with the news media, the legacy news media in the form of Morning Joe. They are having serious financial concerns, and I really couldn't be happier concerning this. Let's take a look at the entire screen. I got several of these articles I want to share with you. So Breitbart is reporting that even Disney, you know how they normally, at least here in Florida, Disney is normally, let's just say, somewhat aggressive. They're not afraid to tangle it up with Governor Ron DeSantis. They feel a need, instead of entertaining children and giving families a fantastic vacation, they feel the need that they need to interject into politics. And that did not serve them well, especially with their recent fight with current Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Remember that Don't Say Gay bill? At least that's what they named it. Disney went to the mat for that, and I'm sure that they regret doing that. And even now, as reported here in Breitbart, it says Disney removes children's cartoon episode about transgender athletes. Just interesting now that they have seen the stunning and huge loss by these woke Democrats. Even Disney is kind of having, I guess you'd call it a mea culpa moment. It says Disney has reportedly decided to shelve an episode of the children's cartoon serials Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. I never heard of it, to be honest with you. Apparently over its plot concerning a transgender high school athlete. It says the Mouse House has decided not to air the episode entitled Gatekeeper, which features stories praising a boy who identifies as a girl and who battles against opposition to his playing on a high school volleyball team. Now that, my friends, is what you call woke. That is insane. And of course, Disney is feeling the heat, as they should feel it, and they have decided they don't want to continue with these type battles. Moving on, we have been talking a lot about Morning Joe, right? Well, not only are the ratings down on these, again, this woke legacy media empire, if you will, you have ratings down anywhere from 40 to 60%, depending on the show, depending on the platform. Morning Joe is definitely not an exception. You have this, apparently they're a husband and wife team. You have Joe Scarborough, and it says Morning Joe responds to Comcast selling MSNBC. He goes, "We could all be fired." And although it was said in the context of a joke, it's really not no joke, my friends. They are seriously having problems with the network. It is true that Comcast is looking to sell off different divisions of Comcast. The interesting thing here is I was actually watching this earlier today on MSNBC, and he was trying to, this is what you call spin. This is what you call spin. They know they're hurting. They know that their jobs are on the line, and they're all rightly so worried about it. It says, MSNBC's Morning Joe host awkwardly joked on Wednesday morning that they were forced to address several reports that the network could be sold. A recent Wall Street Journal reported that Comcast was planning to spin off its suite of NBC Universal-owned cable channels, including the very network that employs them, which of course is MSNBC. It goes on to say Comcast is expected to announce Wednesday that it is moving forward with a plan to spin off its NBC Universal cable TV networks, according to people familiar with the situation, acknowledging that it will be better off without a business that was once its crown jewel. This MSNBC was their starship show, I guess you can call it. The company, which last month said it was studying the idea, will separate off entertainment and news channels, including MSNBC, CNBC, USA Oxygen, Sci-Fi, and the Golf Channel. Those assets generated about $7 billion in revenue in the last 12 months, ending September 30th. It says the Wall Street Journal's Samora reported. Okay, after Mika Brzezinski, that's the lady reporter, his wife, they apparently do the show together every morning. After she reported the news straight, Joe Scarborough, her husband, attempted to joke about the situation by mentioning his wife, who is his co-host, having a penthouse. And he goes on to say, I will say really quickly on this, Drudge at the top said, like, news melts down. All this other stuff, Scarborough said, referring to the news aggregate website, the Drudge Report. I mean, I could be completely wrong. We could all be fired a year from now. Yeah, I would say that's a good way to look at it. When this happens, you never know what's going to happen, Scarborough said. His wife added, or tomorrow, end quote, with what seemed to be a slightly forced laugh when she was clearly not thrilled with the idea of the show being in danger. Wouldn't that be sweet justice when you think about it, that you have these two individuals, this entire network. I mean, this is the same network that has, what is it, Joy Reid and some of these other lunatics on there. They have spent the last 2 to 3 years at a minimum hammering President-elect Donald Trump and his supporters. They have referred to him as Nazis. They have called him every name in the book. And then you have them now, after this election, after this huge loss by the Democrats, they're having their own mea culpa moment where they basically went to Mar-a-Lago, President Trump's home right here in Florida, and they, I guess that's probably a good way to say it, that they kissed the ring of Donald Trump. I think it was a great idea on Donald Trump's side to basically, as we talked about yesterday, cool the mark. But I'm sure they are having some very clear thoughts that, hey, things may not be that well at our house. Our jobs could be on the line. Clearly, Americans reject this wokeism. There has been a lot of channels, even right here on YouTube, that essentially are what you would call these woke liberal channels. I have talked about many of them on this program. Hey, let's be straight up about it. They have been losing a ton of subscribers. Generally, on your subscribers, it can go up and down a little bit, but generally it always goes up one direction only. And these so-called big liberal channels, folks, they have been losing a ton of viewers. And again, we touched a little bit on that yesterday. And let's see what my buddy Zach has to say here. I wonder how often, rather infrequently, any kid encounters a transgender person prior to reaching adulthood. That's a good point, Zach. We do a lot of talking, and we're going to talk a little bit about this today. All this transgender stuff, all this wokeism in our lives, and basically individuals that are affected in this category, if you will, it depends on the report that you read, but let's just say it's a very small segment of the population. Generally, it's 1% or less, if not even lower than that. And yet you have the entire Democratic apparatus. They have been focused like a laser on all these, I call them BS issues. I just don't think they're that important of an issue. And they keep trying to cram their thoughts down our throats and into the minds of our children. And finally, people have said, enough. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of this being drilled on me and treated like I'm some type of bad, evil person. You're a racist, you're a transphobe, you're whatever, if you don't come around to their way of thinking. And I am so happy that the American people has spoke up and said enough of this. And of course, now, ladies and gentlemen, they rightly so are paying the price for their nonsense. That's a good comment, Zach. Petrified newscasters should receive massive pay cuts. I think that's coming. I definitely think they're going to have some serious issues. If they don't outright lose their job, I definitely think they can look forward to some serious pay cuts. And, the point is this, where are they going to go after this? I mean, you have these two making the huge amount of money that they make. What are they going to do? Start from scratch and start a podcast or start talking on YouTube like I am? I mean, it's not exactly the gig that they were looking for. I mean, there's only a certain amount of market that they would have at their disposal to, try to start over, I guess is about the best way to say it. So I would not want to be in their shoes, to be real blunt and real direct about it. Not a good place to be. It's always better when you're winning. I'm sure you all have noticed that. When you're on the winning side, it's always the better side to be on. And let's switch our screens appropriately here. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into some other news that I have for us to discuss. I want to talk about some of the main things that are going on right now in the news. Now, we are all aware that in New York, the case that's brought by the New York City. He's not the attorney general. He's the attorney for the city's attorney, Alvin Bragg. Actually, he's called the district attorney. So the district attorney, Alvin Bragg, this is the guy that filed first, if you remember, 2-3 years ago now, against President Donald Trump elect. It's clearly all part of this lawfare. It was clearly designed and it was focused to keep Donald Trump from being the next president of the United States. And clearly, this has failed. I mean, that's about as clear of a way to put it. All of this has failed. The problem is they are trying to hold this over Donald Trump's head for the next 4 to 5 years. They need to dismiss this case. They know this case is a loser. If you remember, they had Hope Hicks and other individuals from Donald Trump's first administration in the middle of his so-called criminal trial, where they took these dead misdemeanors, resurrected them as felonies by using some type of federal law, some type of FTC law that's normally taken care of by the FTC. I mean, it was just some weird, novel legal theory, and they ended up convicting President Trump on these 36 felonies, Class C felonies. And now, after that verdict came in, they had the Supreme Court hand down that decision that a president has total, not qualified, total immunity for any type of actions he has taken in his official capacity as president of the United States. And then there's other protections on the periphery that surrounds his job. So basically, it's one of them situations where you're making a recipe, you got garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. But they've been dragging their feet, not wanting to pass sentence on President Trump. That's just what it boils down to. This guy, Alvin Bragg, he knows he has lost. Let me minimize myself so you can see his ugly picture down there at the bottom. But he knows, ladies and gentlemen, that he has lost. I mean, there's really no other way to say it. This guy has lost. He knows he has lost this case. And remember, despite what you hear on The View or some of these other crazy channels, President Trump is not a convicted felon. Until he is sentenced under New York law, you are not technically a convicted felon unless and until the sentence is actually passed. So they have this stalemate going on. The Judge Merchant, the judge in this case, and of course the city DA, they know that they cannot go forward with this case because Donald Trump is about to be once again president of the United States. We have 3 different systems of government. You cannot have a local DA imposing any type of restriction, penalty, incarceration, fine, whatever you want to call it, on a president, and I would argue a president-elect of the United States. It's really just that simple. And these people all know this. They all know this without a doubt, and they're trying to find some way to hold this over Donald Trump's head. That's exactly what's going on here, because what they've decided to do, and it's still up to Judge Merchant. He's got to make his decision on there. But Alvin Bragg has came out and said, now, hey, I want the judge to basically hold it for 4 years. Let's wait till Donald Trump is out of office, and then we can revisit this issue and pass sentence on Donald Trump. And the folks, that is so outrageous. It's unprecedented. It is unconstitutional. I'm going to tell you why it's unconstitutional. And more specifically, I'm going to explain what Donald Trump can do that I think he's going to do to put a stop to this crazy situation. So let's go ahead and take a look at this first video right here. You have News Nation Dan Abrams. He's got a couple thoughts on this, and then we'll talk about it here.
Joining me now is Jim Trusty, former assistant U.S. attorney for the District of Maryland and previously represented Donald Trump in both the January 6th and classified documents case. Jim, good to see you again. What do you make of this decision by Alvin Bragg?
I think Bragg's lining up to punt on 2nd down. I mean, you're exactly right. This is crazy territory. And I think there's a backstory that's worth mentioning here. You know, this is, by all accounts, an inventive prosecution. That's probably the cleanest word I can use for it on TV. And one that I know you've called out as being kind of selective and strange and misguided. But it's also a case that even if you accept that these inventive felonies are somehow crimes, that your own internal bookkeeping about a perfectly legal NDA is a crime, it shouldn't lead to jail for anybody.
Right.
And so the backstory in my mind is Bragg's office, for all of these like ridiculous statements about how they just care about accountability and fairness, if they were not seeking jail, they could say, let's just go to sentencing. We're not even asking for prison, judge. Let's get this over with. So clearly, I think behind the scenes, I don't know this from any inside knowledge, but strikes me the right inference here is Bragg's office wants to seek jail on this ridiculous case. And now they want to basically just punt it for 4 years. And
that's exactly right. I have said from day one that they will definitely attempt to put President Trump in jail. I don't have any doubt about that. They want to send him to Rikers Island so bad they can taste it. Take that to the bank. I have no doubt about that. I've had people say, oh, well, they can't sentence him to jail. It's not severe enough. If it was to stand, think of this. You have 34, 36 felonies, even though they're Class C felonies, that President Trump has been convicted of by the jury so far. In addition to that, President Trump was fined, I believe, no less than 10 times by this judge. And we know that this judge is a Democrat in a black robe. I mean, he is a very active, angry. He is a Democrat that is wanting to make history by taking out Donald Trump. I think that's very clear. I don't see how anybody else can read it any differently. Remember, his daughter is a huge Democratic operative in the Democratic Party. She was the campaign manager, or her company was the campaign manager for Kamala Harris, Adam Schiff, a lot of Democratic candidates and all different types of offices all across this country. And it's really hard to say that you can separate the two. Clearly, there has been a orchestrated plan here, I believe, between the Biden administration and all these other local actors to, as Alan Dershowitz would say, get Trump. And there's a lot of evidence to support that. One quick fact that I'll let you know about is that Judge Merchan received all of these so-called Trump cases. Normally, when a judge is assigned to a case, it's what they call a lottery. Basically, the case comes in and you have this revolving door of judges that are supposed to randomly be assigned these cases. But there's no way this is random. All of these cases that have been in the orbit of Donald Trump have been handled by this one judge. This is clearly an orchestrated effort to get Trump. I don't see how they can justify it any other way. But there's two things going on here. They want to delay this so that they can effectively have this noose around President Donald Trump the entire time he is out of office. And then once he's out of office, they want to be able to push him off the chair, so to speak, and hang. That's my deliberate opinion, and we will continue on with this.
Hope that the dust settles in a way where they can come back and do it. I mean, it's ludicrous to me.
Let's say it wasn't jail time. Let's say it was community service. I mean, I can't see the president-elect, on the side of the road cleaning up trash either.
Well, he has a trash truck and he's got a vest, so I don't know about that, Dan. I mean,
it's actually funny.
That worked out pretty well being called
That's
garbage.
true.
No, but I mean, but there's ways to modify. Look, this is a symbolic conviction at best. It's a ridiculous case. So you could basically say it's unsupervised conditions of probation or release.
Right.
Or that, you just want it done at some point and they make it 5 years, try to extend it somehow as you get into it.
So the takeaway here is, like this guy is talking about, they are just trying to find a way to keep this case alive. There's one other thing, too, that I think is extremely important to pull out. Not only do they want to keep it alive, they want to use it as a noose. There's one other thing, too. Alvin Bragg is up for re-election, I believe, this next year. He's got an election that's pending, even though it's kind of an off year as far as elections goes. It doesn't matter, ladies and gentlemen. Alvin Bragg, wants to use what he views as his biggest accomplishment in the heavily Democratic jurisdiction there in New York City. And that's exactly what's going on here. He wants to have this under his wing, so to speak, so he can campaign on it. Another outrageous situation going on with this particular case. You're not supposed to be able to target somebody like this for just political reasons, for reasons of keeping somebody from running for office. I got this video here I want us to watch. This is what I like Alan Dershowitz. I know some of y'all don't as much as I do, but I like the way he goes through things and he points things out. He has came up with a couple of things that I think are spot on that President Trump is likely to do, considering all this nonsense that has been going on in this case. And what I'm talking about is there's something called a mandamus, and there's some other tools, let's just call them tools, that the president has in his box, so to speak, that he could pull out, have his Department of Justice pull out, and go after Alvin Bragg and these other bad actors like Letitia James, and put a stop to this nonsense. Remember, one of Donald Trump's attorneys has come forward and said to Letitia James that if you keep this up, we're going to go after you and effectively put you in jail. Well, I was just talking about this mandamus order, this mandamus situation. Now, a mandamus is something that's not used that often, but think of it this way. If you as a legal official have a duty to do something and you refuse to do it, well, how do you get what you need? So let's say you needed a permit on a building and you had the local official there just saying, I'm just not going to give you one. I know you paid for it. I know it's a valid permit. I'm just not going to do it. Well, that's when you can go to court and ask for a mandamus, which is effectively a judge telling somebody, you shall do this. If you don't do it, I'll put you in jail. It's really just that simple. And in the case for Donald Trump, for example, he could go to a federal court, get it out of this New York BS courts up there, put it in federal court, and basically use some type of mandamus action. There's a few other actions that he could use. I believe there's some civil rights violations that are going on. And additionally, as I said, it's unconstitutional, ladies and gentlemen, if for no other reason, you simply cannot have a president of the United States that is effectively wearing a noose by the judicial branch. It's just really that simple. And I'm confident that one way or the other, the Supreme Court of the United States would put a stop to this one way or the other. So let's listen to Alan Dershowitz here and let's see exactly what he thinks about this, and maybe he can shed a little bit of light on this here for us.
Legal analyst Greg Jarrett, former Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz. Let's go to the Trump issue first. Professor, we know the Supreme Court has ruled on the issue of presidential immunity. We know in this case that evidence was presented to that jury, Hope Hicks, for example, testimony given in that case directly tying Donald Trump to the time he was in office. That case on every measure should be thrown out. A novel legal case, statute of limitations long gone for a legal NDA that was labeled an NDA and put together by a lawyer for the president.
Well, this is a slam dunk for appeal, which is exactly why Bragg doesn't want it to go to appeal. He wants to campaign for office next year with the scalp of Donald Trump, saying, I have him.
That's another very valid point I want to make sure we are clear about. Generally speaking, in court, you cannot appeal it until you have what you call a final disposition of the case. Think about it. You have to have the case effectively over with before you can appeal, right? That kind of makes sense. Now, there's something called an interlocutory appeal, which is basically an appeal even though the case is going on. Although those are difficult, and depending on the state, they're heavily restricted. They're not very commonly granted, although sometimes they prevail. I mean, again, there are some other tools that they could use, but clearly it's a trick. It's a trick like they have been doing all along with this lawfare. If they were to basically sentence President-elect Donald Trump, then the case would be over. And the good news is finally Donald Trump could appeal this case and take it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. So just keep that in mind. That's yet another reason they're doing what they're doing.
I have him convicted by a jury. He wants to make sure when he serves as president, he's always referred to by CNN as a president who was convicted by a jury. This is an attempt to circumvent the appellate process. It's illegal, it's unethical, it's unconstitutional, it's immoral. And my advice to the Trump lawyers is if Marchant says he's going to put this sentencing off for 4 years, immediately file a writ of mandamus to the appellate courts. It's a very, very appropriate writ because the writ of mandamus is designed to get review when you can't get an appeal. And here, by denying him the right to be sentenced right now, they're denying him the right to appeal because under New York law, you can't appeal.
Remember this too, Alan Dershowitz here, he has been a lifelong Democrat. He has been so outraged about this entire Trump situation, let's just call it lawfare, that he actually resigned from being a Democrat. Now he considered himself just an independent. Remember, he was one of the attorneys that helped Donald Trump during his first impeachment trial, even though he's very clear and open to admit he has never voted for Donald Trump. I'm not sure if he voted for him this time around or not. But this is a man, and I realize a lot of y'all don't like him. I've heard comments and received, and that's fine. I do like him. I'd like to listen to what he says because he definitely strives to be fair-minded and kind of straddle the fence, so to speak, on these things. Zach, you're saying a mandamus is about correcting a discretionary act, which isn't really the same as stopping lawfare. Well, the discretionary act, I'm not sure exactly what you're getting at on there. It is discretionary in the sense you can choose to file it or not file it. The hey, American Anna, thanks for showing up. Good to see you, sweetheart. So the mandamus is something that is rarely used. I'm just going to be perfectly honest with you. It's not used that often. I have filed mandamuses in my life. One time, I can't remember what it was. I think it had to do with what I gave an example for earlier. I've always been in the contracting business my entire life, and I think that's exactly what it was. There was some official for a local county that wouldn't do something that they're legally obligated to do, and that was the reason I had to use the mandamus. Now, in this particular situation, it's a whole different animal. We're talking about in a criminal court context, and as the professor's pointing out here, this is a way to effectively get it into court, even though it's generally not allowed in court because of the fact that there's no final disposition in this case. And one last thing I'll say, this is such a unique case, a unique situation. I'm very confident that some attorney that can come up with some type of a concept in which this could be brought to court. Same way that you have Alvin Bragg, Fannie Willis, Letitia James, all trying to come up with these novel legal theories to get their cases into court and try to obtain convictions against President Donald Trump. For example, you had Alvin Bragg, as I said, took these dead misdemeanors. They were expired by the statute of limitations, which simply means too much time has went by that they were legally able to be brought. And they were misdemeanors. They were not felonies. These were misdemeanors if they were charged within the statute of limitations. In addition to that, you have a local district attorney using federal election law to try to breathe life into these dead felonies. I mean, this is, these dead misdemeanors. This is so outrageous on so many levels. In addition to that, when the jury convicted the president, I've never heard of this at a trial. I've never heard of this in my entire life. They didn't even say exactly what the crime was. They were allowed to choose 2 or 3 things to say, okay, that's what he violated. In other words, if you're in a murder trial, they have to tell you by law, we accuse you of killing John Doe. You know exactly what your charge was. Well, the president in this case in New York State, we don't technically know what he's guilty of. It can be one of 3 things, but it does not have to be unanimous. Have you ever heard of a decision in a criminal context in the United States of America that does not require unanimity? There's no such thing. It's barred by the Constitution of the United States, my friend.
Until you have a final judgment, and a final judgment means a sentence. So this is an attempt to circumvent the law. It's an attempt to put Bragg above the law, and I think the courts will hold him responsible and will do the right thing and reverse this conviction on appeal.
Do you agree with that, Greg Jarrett, or maybe just let the judge sentence Donald Trump, then go through the appeals process while he is president?
Sure.
Well, we just don't know what he's going to do. But I do agree that delaying the Trump case for 4 years is ludicrous. It's an insult to justice, and it violates state law, by the way, that requires sentencing within 12 months from conviction. The dilemma for Trump's lawyer.
That's an interesting take, too. I did not know that. Under New York law, a judge has to pronounce sentence to a defendant within 12 months. So they have yet another problem, another hurdle that Alvin Bragg and Judge Merchant, for that matter, is going to have to find a way to overcome. It's in direct violation of New York law.
Is that they cannot appeal all of Merchan's chronic reversible errors at trial until there is, as the professor points out, an adjudication. Well, that happens at sentencing. They can, however, immediately appeal if Merchan denies the motion to dismiss on the immunity claim. If the judge refuses to rule, and that's what he's doing right now, they should seek a writ of mandamus from a higher court, force him to do his job, for goodness.
Yeah, so he's not even the judge. Judge Merchant's not even willing to rule on the motion to dismiss, which has to do with the ruling from the United States Supreme Court saying that a president has absolute total immunity for official acts. He won't even rule on that, ladies and gentlemen, because it's a game. It's a sham. It's unconscionable in the United States of America that this is going on in our court system. And it's a big court system. We're talking the biggest city in the world, New York City. What is going on? This is ridiculous. They have lost this election. They have a president coming into power. And I would not be wanting to be on the receiving side of Donald Trump's Department of Justice when they start running. I mean, they're going to take a look. They have no choice but to take a look at all of these, I would call them even civil rights violations. It's a blatant abuse of state law in New York. It's a violation of Donald Trump's civil rights under the Constitution, federal law. I'm telling you, these people are going to pay a high price.
Mistakes.
Right.
But also the defense still has pending a petition to remove the case to federal court where it belongs, because this was always an incoherent prosecution. It should never have been brought. Bragg manipulated the law, transforming misdemeanors into phantom felonies. He claimed it influenced the election. Well, guess what? The transactions happened after the election, and it's not a crime to conceal a perfectly legal non-disclosure agreement. People do it every day.
It's just outrageous. This whole situation is just nothing short of sickening. He makes a very valid point right there at the end that, and just to refresh everybody's memory, the actual jurors had to decide, and this is where it gets really, really weird. They had to decide under the FTC rules, under, let's just call it election law. They had to decide whether the hush money that Donald Trump paid, and just so we're clear, he wrote 34, 36 different checks over time to Stormy Daniels, the porn star, and that's how they got 34 to 36 felony counts. Every time Donald Trump wrote a check and sent the check, they considered that the crime, all right? So, but here's the funny thing. Did Donald Trump consider that a personal expense, or did he consider that an expense of the campaign? Well, Donald Trump said, hey, it's a personal situation, so he paid it out of his personal funds shortly before the election. Even if he had reported it as a campaign expense, it would not have been disclosed publicly till the first quarter of the following year, which would be 2017. Does that make any sense? You have to categorize your expenses as a candidate as personal or coming from the campaign. In this particular case, guess how Donald Trump classified these checks to Stormy Daniels. Well, you probably guessed wrong unless you've been listening to me about this. He categorized them as personal expenses because they are personal expenses. They brought this case saying that you've committed 34, 36 felonies because you should have listed these as campaign expenses. I'm not kidding you. That's what this is all about. He said they're personal. They said they should have been classified as campaign expenses. Not that it would have made any difference. And listen, bet this, had President Donald Trump called them campaign expenses, you know what the story would be. They'd be hammering them the same way. And their mantra would be, hey, he tried to make the campaign pay for this, and this was his personal affair, his personal business. There was no way to win this. This was fraudulent. This was doomed. Either way, this would have went down. There was no way for Donald Trump to come out of this without being charged and obviously convicted in the very heavy Democratic district of New York City. And I believe it's like 9 out of 10 people are registered Democrats in the city of New York. I think it's 95%. Whatever it is a very unfriendly venue for Donald Trump. And of course, the judge would never allow that case to be moved like they do most other cases where a person cannot get a fair trial. They could have moved it to upstate New York, for example, which would be a much more conservative, more even kill area. So to speak. So let me double check our comments, make sure I'm caught up on those. The American Nana, thank you for being here again, sweetheart. Appreciate it. I have full confidence that President Trump will put an end to this kind of abuse. And of course, these people need to be able to. I agree. You know, at first, I have been talking at length about the fact that, listen, I'd like President Trump to come into office. And if we have time, I have a actual picture or statement that was released by the president where he is pretty well saying what I am saying, that he's not looking to go after his enemies. As he said, I'm not looking for retribution. And I believe him for the most part on that. I don't know if I personally could have went through what President Trump went through and not have sought retribution. I'm just being honest with you. It's not my personality to, well, you know what I'm saying. I just can't take that type of, you know what, it just would be something I would definitely be going after. So Donald Trump says he can do it. Well, guess what? They're not going to leave him alone. They're not going to give him the opportunity to basically forgive and set this aside for the benefit of the country. Frankly, benefit for you, benefit for me, to reinstall trust in our institutions right here in the United States. That's what he's trying to do, but I don't think these people are going to allow him. Exhibit 1 is what we're talking about today with this Alvin Bragg in New York State. You got Judge Merchant. These people are playing games with Donald Trump's very life. They're playing games with our democracy. They're undermining our democracy. This is the kind of nonsense that brings down even the great Roman Empire, is this type of fraud, this type of abuse, this type of malfeasance. It's just when you have corruption's the best word. This type of corruption undermines an entire country. I don't think there's any other way to gloss it over. And that's what we're facing. So I think at the end of the day, Donald Trump's going to have no choice but to go after these people and hold them accountable for their actions. And I would say the most likely avenue for that is going to be civil rights of some sort. You already heard Donald Trump's attorney, I think it was Mike Davis, that warned Letitia James that if you keep this up, we're going to go after you for what's called violation of rights. And that's pretty well what I'm talking about in the context of civil rights. They're violating and have violated and continue to violate Donald Trump's constitutional rights. And they need to put a stop to this. You cannot have this continue on. It needs to stop. And these people, they're in the limelight. They're getting famous in their mind because all this attention is on them. And I'm talking everyone from Jack Smith, Fannie Willis, T.J. James, Alvin Bragg. These people need to get what they got coming to them. It's really in the best interest of the country that President Trump has to put a stop, as American Nana was just saying, into this type of abuse. I don't really see anything else. But Zach says existing laws, rules did not anticipate the acts under scrutiny. I think that's probably fair. Listen, our founding fathers knew from even the history before them, the tendencies of mankind, their tendency for corruption, their tendency to be evil. I just call it what it is. So they wisely put a lot of these checks and balances in our system. And as we talked about yesterday, they were so concerned that even with all these assurances in the Constitution, they would not sign off on the Constitution of the United States unless and until we got the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, which spell out our rights, the right to free speech, the right to religion, what we call the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution. And you can see why. You can see why, ladies and gentlemen, this is terrible, what they're doing and what they try to continue to do. American Nana, the goal of this judge to put this charge on hold for 4 years. Yeah, it's aggravating, but listen, the good news is this. I wasn't aware until I just listened to that video with you. I listened to parts of it, not the whole thing. New York state law will not allow this. This is in violation of New York state law. The judge has to rule within 12 months of the so-called conviction. That's great news. I think that's fantastic. They're going to have to do it. And of course, that's where the mandamus comes in. The mandamus is real easy. New York law says blank, this judge will not do blank. And that's it. You can push it into federal court, end of story. I want to be clear about something. The good news here is President Trump is going to be able to fix this. He's about to be the most powerful man in the world, in the most powerful position in the world. So this is not like it was 6 months ago or even a year or two ago where everything kind of looked gloom and doom and we were having to suffer all of these intolerable injustices, all this time frame. I just don't see that continuing in perpetuity. Donald Trump is going to be able to stop this. I'm extremely confident that this is the way it's going to go down, and so you don't have to be much concerned about it. And in keeping with what I just said, I have proof of what I am talking about. So Donald Trump is in the process of appointing his cabinet and his team, and he's putting his cabinet, his team together, right? So one of his picks is an individual that is going to serve as the FCC chair. And this is a quick interview with him. Listen to what he says about what Donald Trump has endured, what he has been put through. And just so we're clear, this guy here, as chair of the FCC, this is the kind of guy that's not going to take no bull. Let me tell you how he's going to get back, and he's going to settle the score, if you will. At a minimum, as the chair of the FCC, these are the people that control the airwaves, and therefore they de facto control the news on some level. Now, they can't tell someone, you can say this, you can't say that, but I tell you what they can do. The federal laws require what they call equal time. And you and I know that they definitely do not give Donald Trump equal time or equal attention, for example, between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump in the election. And they know this, and they're worried about this. And now that Donald Trump has won, they are very, very concerned about this. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at this video, and let's you guys tell me what you think is going to happen as
Commissioner Brendan Carr as chairman of that agency, saying that Commissioner Carr is a warrior for free speech and has fought against the regulatory lawfare that has stifled Americans' freedoms and held back our economy. He will end the regulatory onslaught that has been crippling America's job creators and innovators and ensure that the FCC delivers for rural America. Brendan Carr joins us now. I'm particularly interested in rural America. What are your top three, besides that, top three to-do items if you get confirmed?
Yeah, thanks so much, Dana.
And remember, this is the guy that Donald Trump has picked to be the chairman, the head of the FCC, and what he says is beautiful.
I want to start by expressing my thanks and appreciation again to President Trump and to congratulate him again on his historic election victory. I mean, it's one for the history books, if you think about it, from the lawfare that he overcame to literally being shot, not just shot at, but being shot. And for me, as I go forward, the first thing is to get together with the president's team and make sure that I 100% understand his agenda. After all, it's going to be his administration, and it's going to be his agenda that people should be pushing. From my perspective, there's a couple of top issues. Number one is looking at tech censorship. You know, free speech is the bedrock of our democracy, and there's been this unprecedented surge in censorship over the last couple of years, and we need to restore Americans' First Amendment rights. Number two is to look at our approach to media. You know, Jeff Bezos just recently did an op-ed where he said that Americans don't trust the news media. He said now they're the least trusted of all. And I think he's speaking a lot of truth there. So I think the status quo.
Folks, just so we're clear, I don't want to get lost in the weeds on this. His first point about installing confidence in our ability to exercise and free speech. How many times have we talked about this on this channel? This is probably one of the number one things on my list that worries me about the future, and that is our ability to lose our free speech. That's one thing I love about Elon Musk and the X platform is it has absolute free speech. I can pretty well say whatever I want on the X platform, not so much on YouTube. You know, I have had videos taken down on YouTube. I did not technically receive a strike, but I did get a firm warning, and technically I'm still under that warning till the end of this month. So I have to be careful on certain things I say. And I told you that I'm in the process of working on a solution to that, whether it's going to be Patreon or it's going to be certain things that are going to be hosted on the X platform. I'm going to come up with something that's going to be workable for all of us. And again, I appreciate y'all's support for the channel because it definitely helps out, especially, you know how a lot of these YouTubers and people on X, whatever, they're always saying, hey, you know, thanks for helping out because I'm always getting censored. Well, I'm telling you what, I used to think that was BS. Because I didn't think they were getting censored, but it's true. It is true. I've had videos taken down. Y'all are aware of the video that I've had taken down recently in the last 30 days. And if you're interested, you have to go over to the X platform at Reach JR Dukes, and you can scroll down and see the videos, the recent media that I've made. And it's pretty clear as to what the so-called problem is there. There's no problem. I did not say anything false or incorrect. But the bottom line is I don't control the platform. And as of right now, it's their platform. And I really hope that Donald Trump, his administration, finds a way to, strong arm these companies into opening it up as far as free speech. Because when you hear these woke Dems, and it's not going to go away, it's going to go away for 4 years, but it has a potential coming back. You're just like they do in Britain. They got people in jail, folks, right now in Britain. Google it. Don't take my word for it. Google it. They're in jail right now in Britain because they posted something on Facebook or some platform and it upset someone else, and now they're in jail. And trust me, they did not say something like I'm going to harm someone. They didn't say fire in a crowded movie theater. They posted something that someone else found objectionable. So when you hear words like disinformation, misinformation, one of the videos we're going to look at tonight, Lord willing, is another interview with that Leachman guy. You know how I love roasting that dude, that so-called pollster that had the keys or whatever. And he's just wrong. I've exposed him for the fraud he is. There is a great video where he's out sparring with someone that's rather popular, and we'll talk about it. That's a little bit of a tease for tonight, but it's a great interview. And the point is, this guy Leachman is saying the reason his keys fell was because the American population has been fed disinformation. And specifically, he mentions Elon Musk, the X platform. These are the things we need to be careful of, ladies and gentlemen, because that's their goal. Is if you don't think the way that these kooks think, they want to put a muzzle on you. They want to tell you something's wrong with you. You know, you're a climate change denier. You're an election denier. I love the way they do that. They are masters at that. And when you're a denier, that doesn't sound good, does it? It sounds like you're a buffoon. You're an idiot. There's an old word that one of them old Westerns I was watching the other day. Sometimes they say words that we don't use anymore, and I look them up out of curiosity, and there's one called a duffer, D-U-F-F-E-R. They think you're a duffer, which just means a complete idiot. So anyway, I just want to interject my 2 cents on there. Let's listen to the rest of what this FCC chairman has to say. I think you'll be impressed.
Particularly when it comes to legacy media needs to change. And 3, we have a real opportunity to get the economy going and creating jobs. When President Trump came in 2017, we were behind the 8 ball when it came to communications policy, and he turned things around. And that's exactly what is going to happen again. We need to free up more spectrum. We need to do permitting reform. You talk about rural broadband. That's the key there. And number 3 is the space economy. I'm down here in South Padre Island right now. There's going to be another Starship launch later today. And it simply cannot take longer to move permitting paper from one desk at an agency to another than it does to build and launch these rockets. So we're going to unleash America's private sector again.
What can the FCC do to help legacy media?
You know, there's a lot the FCC can do. Broadcasters are differently situated than other speakers. They get free access to a valuable public resource, the airwaves, and they're licensed by the FCC. And
there we go.
Exchange for that is they have to serve the public interest. I think it's important that we take another look at that and we reinvigorate it. There's also a news distortion complaint at the FCC still having to do with CBS, and CBS has a transaction before the FCC. And I'm pretty confident that
I am so happy to hear this guy talk like this. I have been talking about this, again, this very subject for quite some time, my friends. Those of you who regularly listen to this channel know how I feel about these subjects, but not one time have I heard anyone say anything similar to what this gentleman is saying as far as we can hold these so-called private companies accountable. The Biden-Harris administration has been telling us for some time, oh, there's nothing we can do to YouTube or to any of the other platforms because they're private companies like Google and Meta and these other so-called private companies who hide behind the private company thing, and they also hide behind the certain rules that the FCC and the FTC have pertaining to the fact that they, I believe it's called a Section 30 clause that they always apply, and basically means that they're kind of hid behind a shield that they're only a publisher. They're not responsible for the content, yet they engage in moderation and elimination of content all the time. And when you cross that threshold, you no longer have protection under Section 230. At least you're not supposed to. And that's what I like about this guy. He's saying the obvious. Hey, these people do have accountability to us and the American people because they use our public airwaves. Amen. See, you can have a private company, but if the feds want to, they can almost always find a federal interest. If you're using the phone lines, it's the feds' jurisdiction. If you're using the airwaves, like he just said, it's the federal jurisdiction. You guys get what I'm saying on this? If you use the mail, you got a federal problem. If you have a firearm involved, it's a federal problem. If the feds want to make a case of it, if they have the will, they can put a stop to it. And that's what this guy is heavily hinting that he is going to do. And I think that that is commendable and exciting. So I'm definitely happy to hear that. So, all right. So I don't want the power hour to become the power hours. Lord willing, I'll see you all later tonight, and we'll pick up our conversation on today's events. I have some other things I want us to discuss and go over. I do appreciate everybody being here. Thanks to my friends on the X platform. Thank you, all y'all on YouTube. And, of course, our friend on Twitch. Thanks for being here again. And just as a reminder, probably about 7:15, somewhere in there, make sure you turn on your alerts, hit the bell notification so you get alerted when I go live. That way, all you got to do is hit click. And on the X platform, it's Reach JR Dukes, JR Dukes on Truth Social, JR Dukes on YouTube, and the same on the Truth Social, YouTube. Rumble is JR Dukes. Only exception, of course, is X at Reach JR Dukes. And you can always find me at jrdukes.com. I appreciate everybody joining me today. Y'all are the best. Appreciate y'all. Appreciate your time. Thanks for the wonderful conversation. May God be blessing each and every one of you and your families, and have his special anointing for the rest of the day. Always like to say, my friends, keep that mind free. Never give up. Until next time, I am J.R. Dukes.